Thanks again, everyone, for being here. It is exciting to us that so many people are thinking about B Corp, talking about B Corp, and we're happy to be one of those people hosting that conversation. First, we just do need to tell everyone we are not affiliated with B Corp. We just work with companies to help them become B Corp certified. So we'll go through the agenda first. We're going to do some intros and then give an overview of B Corp's assessment process, what it takes to get certified, and benefits companies see from certification. And then we'll have time for questions and discussions at the end. So feel free to use the chat, and I'll be stopping periodically to go and answer questions. So Naman, you want to go first?
Sure. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Naman. I stay in Toronto. I run a small online media company around sustainability. It's called Epic. I interview founders that are building sustainable businesses. And I also write a weekly newsletter around sustainable startups across the globe. I also help smaller businesses which have a sustainability angle narrate their story. And I'm helping Eliza co-host this event. Thanks again for joining.
And I'm Eliza Erskine. I am the founder of Buoy Consulting, and we provide sustainability strategy, consulting, reporting, and B Corp certification to early stage and small companies. I am based in New York and like having these conversations with companies that are thinking about B Corp certification and the sort of triple bottom line movement. So I'm excited that you're all here today, and let's get going. Okay, so B Corp certification certifies your company to a social and environmental standard. It's given by a group called BLab, and the certification means that you have passed BLab's criteria for B Corp certification and are approved as a company that incorporates people, planet, and profit into your business structure. So B Corp companies have to fill out an online assessment. They change their legal standing and become approved as a company that incorporates all of these things into their business model. So I think a good way to help kind of explain B Corp certification is to look at companies that have already received the certification. So we can look at Allbirds, Clean Canteen, Eileen Fisher, Patagonia. These are all companies that have received B Corp certification. And certification is open to any type of for-profit businesses. So you can be a product or a service-based business. As long as you're for-profit, you're eligible for certification. So certification looks at the strength of your business in these 5 main areas that are listed: workers, governance, customers, environment, and community. Okay, so why do companies get certified? I think companies really look to B Corp as a certification of their values and the actions that they're taking to support the planet. So especially for companies that are growing, that might not have a sustainability team, but know that they're taking action on sustainability, the certification process is really a great way to cement those sustainability practices and prove to stakeholders that you're taking action. There are a lot of statistics now on how B Corps grow faster. They have better customer retention. They performed better during the pandemic. And then these are just some quotes from companies that have gotten certification. And they're talking about what certification means to them and how it's benefited their company. So Tiffany from TMI Consulting talks about how B Corp is a recruitment tool. You know, she doesn't have to search for staff. They come to her based on B Corp certification. And then the other one, and I've seen this from different organizations, Tom at a Surety Life Insurance Company talks about how other businesses want to do business with him because of his B Corp certification. It's really a signifier of trustworthy organizations, and people want to do business with other businesses that share their values. So, B Corps talk about employee engagement, hiring, and showing the B Corp certification to connect with customers, connect with suppliers. And we can look at B Corps like Ben and Jerry's, Patagonia. These are companies that have a significant following, and also companies that have made an explicit environmental commitment. So it really depends on the type of company, but the benefits are pretty significant if you make the decision to do it. Okay, so now let's get to into the certification process. So to get certified by B Corp, you complete a 3-part process. So the first one is completing the assessment, then you get verified through BLab, and then you have to complete the legal requirement. So we're going to talk about each of these steps. So the first part, Naman, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, great. So let's talk about completing the assessment. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. This is also kind of the biggest part of getting certified, is going through the assessment. So the assessment is about 100 questions. It's based on your business type and industry, and then it covers those 5 areas that we talked about: workers, governance, community, customers, and environment. These are some examples of questions on the side. You can see total energy use, facility energy efficiency. These are just some examples of questions. So the assessment is an online platform, and it leads you through this assessment. You answer each question and provide data on your company. Points are weighed differently based on your industry and the type of business you're in, and also how you answer other questions. So you do get more points for higher scoring answers if you contribute a larger portion of healthcare fees for employees, as an example. If you have more policies in certain areas. For this one, renewable energy usage. If you have 100% renewable energy use, that's going to be more points. And if you only have, say, 10 or 25%, for example. So the points are weighted, but as you go through the assessment, it will show you how many points you've completed and how you're doing. And then the other thing to keep in mind when you're completing the assessment is that you need to document everything that you're talking about. So B Corp and BLab will look at every question that you've answered, and then you have to show proof of it, basically. So there are comment boxes and places to upload the different policies or proof of what you're doing. So it's important to use the assessment and add comments and add documentation, and to write, what you're documenting, how this policy covers this, and showing proof that what you're doing is doing the assessment. So that's kind of how the assessment process works. Once you get into it, it's pretty intuitive. You just have to kind of go through and basically answer what they're asking you, and then provide documentation. So the next part of the process is getting verified. So that's what I was talking about earlier, where BLab will review your assessment and they'll ask for proof. So for B Corp, it's a minimum of 80 points to get certified. I recommend that people complete the assessment and apply with at least 85 points, just to have some extra kind of buffer. So once you have completed the assessment, you move into the verification process. So BLab receives your assessment. They'll do an internal review, and will go through and mark things and check items that they want to talk about for your assessment review call. So the final part of the verification process is doing this assessment review call, where you meet with BLab and you go through the assessment with them. So they'll review your documentation with you. They'll ask you to show proof of things if you haven't already. And just go through your assessment, they'll get a better idea of your company. And then they'll share with you what their internal review has found. So BLab will do a background check on your company. They'll ask you some different questions about suppliers. They'll ask you about different business dealings and other information in that way. So the assessment process or verification process rather that can take anywhere, I would say, from 6 weeks to 6 months. It really depends on BLab's queue and how much you have to go back and forth with them to get things certified. So it's just important that you know that there is a verification process. This is a pretty robust process that B Corp has put in place, and they're really making sure that you're doing what you say that you're doing, and what you're sharing and discussing is actually true. So next slide, please, Laman. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the legal portion of this. So I have seen some mixed messaging around the legal part, so I think it's important to address it. The part of the B Corp process is changing your legal status to a benefit corporation. So this change holds you to the standard of the triple bottom line that we talked about earlier. So when you change your legal status to a benefit corporation, you are saying, as a company, we are legally saying we will incorporate people, planet, and profit equally into this. A lot of companies, corporations have to put shareholders first. This is saying that we will make everything in our legal power possible to consider the triple bottom line. So the exact legal changes really vary by state and how you're set up. I'm not a lawyer. If you're interested in legal information, I'm going to share some resources at the end that will talk more about the legal change, but it's important to know that it is required. The other thing that is mandated by BLab is a fee. There is a fee that you have to pay to become certified, and that you have to pay annually, and that is a revenue-based fee system. It's listed on BLab's website, and it's just varying degrees of revenue, and it increases as your revenue increases. So I will also share that listing in a few minutes. Okay, any questions so far? I'm going to get more into kind of common questions, and then we can go. Brian says, does that create a conflict of interest? Brian, can you talk more about what you mean by that? The legal change create a conflict of interest, you mean?
I was talking about the revenue-based fee system. If the fee is based upon the size of the revenue, and revenue may be generated based on branding around being a B Corp, does it not benefit the certifier to certify large organizations even if they aren't fulfilling their obligations?
That's a good question. I never really thought about it that way. I mean, the fee is done after you've already been certified. Like, that's the last process. BLab they look at your revenue, but they're not making a decision based on your revenue. They're making a decision based on your corporate practices. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense on paper. It just sounds like there's potential for conflict there because the decision-making process knows that there's, potentially lucrative fees in the future or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, BLab tries to go after those bigger companies, and now they're trying to make not changes, but they're definitely creating a tier of multinational corporations So obviously it benefits them to have those higher revenue companies. I look at it sort of the opposite, and I tell clients this, that it benefits you to apply when you have lower revenue because your fees will be less. But that's a good question. I'll have to think about that. Okay, so let's get into common questions. So these are questions that I get, I would say most often, by companies that are completing the assessment. So the first question is, how long will it take? This is far and away the most common question. The unfortunate answer is it really depends. It totally depends on your business. It depends a lot on BLab. Right now, there's about a 6 to 8 month wait to even get into the assessment queue because BLab has been so busy. So the two things to think about when you're trying to consider your own timing is you need to think about how much you have documented already, and what resources do you have to allocate this. Obviously, size also plays a role, but if you don't have anything documented, it's going to take you much longer to go through the assessment and meet the different requirements. Whereas if you already have most of these policies in place, it will be easier to go through the assessment and complete the assessment. The other consideration is just time and resources that you have to allocate to this. If you're a business of one and you're already working long hours, it's going to take you much longer than if you have, an intern or an employee that can dedicate a lot of time to this. There's no average on time, it really depends, but this definitely is a process that will take longer than a couple weeks. I recommend, allocating a couple hours every week for multiple months, and just understanding that it's going to take a pretty significant chunk of time to go through the assessment. And then the other time question, of course, is B Corp's queue, because they're dealing with so many companies. I talked to someone a couple weeks ago who applied in August and is still not to the verification portion of it with BLab yet. So BLab is dealing with a long timeline on their end. So as you're kind of thinking about, oh, we want to get certified this year, that's just another thing to keep in mind. And then the other question I think it's important to kind of note and talk about is, I don't do, say, environment or a lot of supply chain things. Is that okay? A lot of companies say, well, I don't have a lot of environmental activities. I don't have a lot to show in one area. For the most part, that's fine. I think it's important that companies lean into the areas and activities that they do have. If you're really strong on employee benefits and those kind of employee-centric activities, lean into those and talk about those and share those. You do need to be proficient in most of the areas, but as long as you can hit 80 points in some combination of those 100 questions in 5 areas, you're fine. So the other thing for looking at, we don't have a lot of environmental activities. The assessment is tailored to your industry. So, if you're a manufacturing company, it's going to be a very different questionnaire than if you're a marketing firm. So B Corp does take those things into account. The other question is, how much does it cost? BLab does have a list of pricing on its website. I'll share that in a couple minutes. I think it's still about $1,000 annually if your revenue is under $150,000, and then goes up from there. So next slide, please, Nauman. Thank you. Okay, so these are some things to keep in mind while you're doing the assessment and going through this whole B Corp world. So the first, I like to think of B Corp, I call them transparent and private. So by that, I mean that unless you tell somebody that you've started the assessment, no one is going to know apart from you and B Corp. So it's free to take the assessment. It's free to start. It's free to use the tool. So it's private and that no one will know unless you tell them. But all the points are transparent. So as soon as you start the assessment, you're able to see all of the questions, all the point values, and how you answer different things and how that changes your point setup. So I think the tool, the online assessment, is pretty easy to use. It's intuitive, and you can see what your progress is, how many more points you need. So I think it's pretty transparent in that way, and it makes it easier to know how far you have to go and to kind of track your progress. The other thing it's important to keep in mind is BLab wants to help. You know, we talked about earlier, BLab wants as many people to apply for this as possible. And they want to get as many people certified as possible. So once you start the assessment, you'll get an email from them. They have all different directories and FAQs and resources and policy templates. And you can set up a meeting with someone from BLab and talk about your view of the assessment, and they'll, give you some information. So use BLab, they're there to help you. Their website is pretty robust and has a lot of resources. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind. And then the other thing is to use your structure and your company. So lean into your company structure, culture, and type. If your employee benefits and engagement are really stellar, use that and build points from there. Use your team to help with the assessment. Use it as a goal setting tool. A lot of teams and companies have great setups around culture and setting goals and doing things done. I really encourage companies to use that when they're looking at B Corp and completing the assessment. So the other thing to keep in mind, this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, but time is on your side. There's no requirement. Obviously, that's good and bad, because once you start the assessment, you can take as long as you want to finish it. But once you start, you can come back to it and go at your own pace. So it's set up to pace as you go. So anyone can start the assessment. I recommend that you look at it if you're thinking about it and kind of how, what it looks like. It's pretty easy to go in and set up something that way. So next slide. Okay, awesome. So these are those resources I was talking about. This is B Corp's website, and then those legal requirements. If you scroll down on the certification page, you will see the fees. So, and I'll also share some other resources at the end too. Naman, if you go to the next. Okay, so now I just want to talk a little bit about how, if you're in this and you're like, oh my gosh, this seems so overwhelming, that's what we help with. So Green Buoy offers a strategy session. It's a 90-minute session. If you're in the assessment and you're like, oh my gosh, what should I do next? Where should I focus? We go through all of that. So we give policy templates. We'll talk for 90 minutes about going through the assessment. I'll tell you where you should be focusing on and basically what to do to get more points. So the last strategy session I did, we added 22 points to hers. So it's good to have someone to kind of talk about it and go through that. So that is one option. And then I also do companies that don't want to do anything at all and want someone to project manage the entire B Corp process. I also do that. And then half day or day long sessions. So I'm pretty flexible on the method. If you are overwhelmed by B Corp, if you want help, if you want kind of someone to map out your process and tell you what to do, we can talk about that. So that's, you can DM me or email me. I'll put my email at the end. But now we can get into questions and discussions. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can put something in the chat, anything that I talked about that you want to go talk more about, dig deeper on. I'm happy to talk about it.
Hi, Eliza. Thank you. Hello? Can you
Hello?
hear? Hi. Thank you so much for this very informative webinar. And I was just wondering if you can share more about the legal perspective, because we've been consulting a couple of attorneys and they've been quote us with different pricing for filing for the B Corp in New York State. Just wondering if you can give more like elaborated kind of instructions on legal transitions.
I can't really give a ton just because I'm not a lawyer. I have someone I can send to you, but it's really, the lawyer will charge you what they want to charge you. So that is really just
their decision.
Yeah, and I mean, lawyers know that this is a popular thing to do now, and I think they're charging accordingly. So yeah, I will send you someone. I have someone that you can talk to.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions? What is the ongoing requirement of a B Corp? Time and energy to maintain. So B Corp recertifies every 3 years, and you have to complete the assessment again and basically prove to B Corp that you're maintaining the status. So as long as you've completed the assessment and you said these are the policies that we have in place, this is the different requirements that we have in place, as long as you're maintaining those policies, then a lot of what B Corp is asking you will already be doing. There's no sort of, once we get certified, then the work begins. I think it's almost the opposite, that you're putting in all this work and effort to get certified, and then it's just sort of maintenance of policies and things that are already in place. If you go into a different revenue stream, if you hire a lot more employees, some of those things might change. But again, that is just kind of disclosing to B Corp during the recertification process that you did those things. BLab will also do some random audits just to kind of make sure that those things are still in place. They'll tell you that, they're coming, but it's really just continuing to do what you have said that you're doing. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions, or just has anybody started the assessment and wants to kind of share their experience?
I have one more question, if you don't mind. Do you,
yeah, please.
Walking through one more time what the legal verification process is? I know you have to work obviously with outside counsel, but once you get certified B Corp, is that when you start the kind of legal process of changing your status?
Yeah, so once you get certified, I think if you're a big enough company, you have up to 2 years to make the legal change.
Okay.
I think for smaller companies, it's like 90 days or something. This is the difference between certified B Corp and benefit corporation. This is another legal thing. And then this, if you scroll to the bottom of that certification page that I put in, it will go through the kind of legal changes. The biggest kind of legal questions that I see and get a lot is companies just don't know that they have to make the legal change, or they think the legal change is optional. So if you know that you have to do it, that's 70% of the battle. And then it's just making the actual legal change. And then you just have to prove to B Corp that you've done that. But you saying, here's the lawyer we've hired, here's the plans, you just have to show that you're putting it in motion, and then eventually put that into practice. And then conversely, the other legal thing that I think is important to know is that you can become a benefit corporation without becoming a B Corp. So B Corp is, the stamp of approval and everything that we've been talking about. But if you are looking at, okay, we just want to certify that our company is incorporating triple bottom line, we don't want to go through this assessment, you can just do that and then market that and share that how you want to with your company.
That's super helpful. Thank you. So if you do B Corp and Benefit Corp, you are waiting to get confirmed as a B Corp first, and then you go through the Benefit Corp process.
Yes, and
Okay.
you do have to do the Benefit Corporation as part of B Corp.
Right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions or things people want to talk about? I don't have other people, I have heard from B Corp that now it's like a 7-month waiting list. I'm curious if other people have heard things or just their experience. If you want to share, if not. Okay, well, I mean, if no one has any other questions, I'll stay online, I'd say for another 20 minutes. But we will be sending the slides and a recording. And let me put in my information, Naman's information, and then some other kind of resources. Okay, Mickey's asking about pending B Corp status. Yeah, so pending B Corp is if you have less than a year in business, you can become a pending B Corp. The sort of process to do that is very similar. You're filling out the assessment and then you get that pending seal, and then you have to go through and verify everything. So yeah, if you want to talk about pending, Mickey, I'm happy to do that. I think the other thing that I think is interesting with B Corp is there's definitely been a shift from these larger companies, you know, Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, that are not that they had to backtrack, but they definitely had to make changes to become B Corp certified. And now I'm seeing a huge shift in early stage companies, small companies, companies that have been in business for under a year that want to build their business to a B Corp standard, which I think is really cool. So B Corp, I think, is not struggling, but it's been kind of a shift for them too, to now have all these newer, younger businesses that have less revenue, to Brian's point, that are basically building their business to the standard. So I think it's just kind of a cool change that's happening. Okay, Liz says, for completely new company, we are open to adopting any processes and policies that are recommended. Is there a friendly resource we can find B Corp friendly policies? Yes, on BLab's website, I think if you go to resources at the top, there's an employee handbook that's B Corp recommended. There's different supply chain policies and different things that they've shared to set up your business in that way. So I'd recommend looking at their resources. You kind of have to dig around to find them, but they're there. Okay, any other questions or experiences people want to share with B Corp? Let me put.
Hi, Eliza, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, please. Is that Johnny? Hi.
Hello, double E, yes, it's
Hi.
Johnny. How are you? Good job today. Great job. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Quick question, as you know, with us with Closed Talk, it's really my brother and myself as partners.
Right.
And we're small. We make apparel for over 300 nonprofits. We run their Shopify stores, all pro bono for them. We drop ship, made on demand.
Right.
Because we're so small, and because we're so small, we obviously don't have an employee handbook. It's my
Right.
brother, my best friend, and me, really. And we don't have like an HR policy. We don't have hiring. I mean, we're not hiring right now. We're not looking to do that. We're kind of bootstrapping.
Right.
So should it be easier for us because of that? That so many of the questions seem to be for like maybe a more Patagonia sized company. Should it be easier or harder, do you think, because we're small?
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if you don't have those things, you will have to create them, whether that's getting the B Corp handbook that I talked about earlier from online. You still have to show that you have those things in place, and you're basically just saying, it's the three of us, here's how we make decisions. Here's how this works. If we would hire, these are the things that we have in place.
Got it. Thank you. So we still have to come up with those things, even though my brother and I like are kind of like share a mind, but we still have to do it.
Yes, exactly. Just because you still have to document it. So, I mean, in some ways it's easier because you can just use those templates and things that are on the website if you wanted, and just say, you know, we both reviewed these, you both sign it, and then that's an option.
Got it. If we hired you for the full service option, which really does sound amazing because we are working around the clock, as probably a lot of people here are trying to build something.
Yeah.
Is that something that's easy for you to get, like template manuals for?
Yeah, I have all those templates and everything.
Oh,
That's part of the full service. Yeah.
great. That is wonderful. That's very,
Yeah, that's a big, a big benefit, I think.
that's a big benefit you provide.
Yeah.
Especially for
So-
guys like us that we just don't have the time.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's sort of, you know, a Patagonia sized company can just put one person in to do that. But, you know, Closetalk is growing and you guys are trying to do all those other things, you know, and in some ways you shouldn't spend your time doing B Corp. You should be doing what you're doing and getting more brands on board. So
Wonderful. Let's set up another time to chat. I'll
okay,
shoot
we can
you
talk
a
about
note.
it again.
I think we're getting at that point where we're just not getting it done ourselves. So I think we need you. Thank
Okay, yeah, I'll email you. Thanks for coming, Johnny. Good to see you.
Thank you, Doubly. Great job today. Very
Thank
helpful.
you. I'm glad. Okay, one question. Once you're certified as a B Corp, what type of support does BLab provide if a company is looking for ways to improve further? This is a great question, and definitely one of the benefits of B Corp is once you're certified, you become what's called the B Hive, and that's the community of other B Corps. So it puts you up with other people in your industry. And people that are B Corps want to talk about what they're doing. They want to share resources. So once you're in that, it's very easy to reach out to another company and say, hey, we see that you guys got 30 points in XYZ environmental thing. How did you do that? What resources did you use? And then I think BLab also does programming and different things set up for companies that are certified. They want you to maintain your status. They want you to kind of improve and make choices that are better for the environment. So I think, yeah, once you're there, it's very easy to kind of be in this community of pushing people further and improving. Kimberly says, is there a way to easily shop for B Corp products online? I tried searching on the B Corp website. It's just a directory of certified companies. I'm not aware of any other sort of like B Corp products. There are a lot of, I think depending on what you're looking for, you can sort by different things. I'm, you know, on like Thrive Market or different, I'm forgetting what the company's called, but they're a B Corp too, and you can search within their website for B Corp certified companies. But for using the directory, I have just found it easier to do, to just keep sorting. So if you want to sort by US, and then if you're looking for clothes, just sort by clothing. Kimberly, if you want to create that, I think a lot of people would be interested in using that as a service. So I've talked to some people that are trying to build things like that. So I think those things are coming. But yeah, I'm curious what you find, because I think the main way that I've been doing it is just directory. The other thing I would look at, actually, I know that 1% for the Planet and B Corp now have a partnership, and 1% for the Planet might have a more robust kind of search tool or feature. What kind of products are you looking for?
Well, just as an example, yesterday it was dish towels.
Oh.
But yeah, I just thought it would be convenient if there was like almost like on Amazon or something, like a checkbox
Right.
to just see B Corp products.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's coming. I think people are building that. It's just a matter of time. Naman, do you have any ways you've searched for that?
I think in the US, Thrive is good. There's Earth Hero as well. They have a good curation of products.
Gold Dune is another one I've seen. I don't remember if they have B Corp.
I know Earth Hero has, I think. Yeah.
Can you put that in the chat?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I haven't heard of them. Yeah, so you're welcome. Any other questions or any other experiences people have? I mean, I think the consumer, employee, supplier angle is very interesting. Obviously, somebody that is going to go to a B Corp webinar like us or is interested in B Corp is also looking for B Corp products. And I hope that that becomes a push for retailers and other reasons to adopt it. But then, I talk to consulting companies, marketing agencies, other service-based businesses really look at B Corp from a employee and supplier benefit standpoint. So I just think it's interesting to think about that and talk about it. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll put my email in here. If you do have any other questions, we'll send out a follow-up email with slides, recording, and then those resources. And if no one else has any other questions, we'll let you get back to your day. Thanks again for coming. It's great to see some familiar faces and meet some new ones. So please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions, if you're going through the assessment and you're just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I'm here to help and talk about it. So thanks again for coming. It means a lot to us that you spend your morning, afternoon, lunchtime hanging out with us. So